So we're going to go ahead and get started. This is our first ever Warsaw Counselor podcast. I'm pretty excited and nervous. My leg over here is going nuts on the chair, but hopefully this will go well. So far, so good. I want to introduce everybody to Mrs. Lindsey Lowery, who is our State Fair admissions rep from State Fair. And then Mrs. Swisher will also be involved with this podcast, and I'm sure you all know Mrs. Swisher. There she is on the screen if you have her there. So anyways, there, and then myself will be in this as well. We got some questions, got some great questions from students and staff and teachers and parents. So we're going to cover all of this hopefully today. This is being recorded, and then also it is closed caption as well. So if you want to watch the recording later, you should be able to see it in closed caption as well. So there'll be a transcript that hopefully will go with it. So we'll just start off right off the bat here. This is a scholarship question podcast. So we're going to be covering scholarships. We did have a student have some very great questions about colleges. We may put a couple of those questions in at the end, depending on time. And maybe that will be our next podcast, is something about colleges and how all that works. So without further ado, we'll get this party started. So the first question we're going to ask is going to be something I'm going to answer, and it says, what are we doing this, or why are we doing this? A freshman named Jonathan came up with this question, and the purpose is we want everybody to be informed. We want to go over why it's important to do scholarships, how it affects you. Jonathan, I know you're a freshman and you pose this question, so it doesn't make sense for a freshman to be involved in this podcast, but there is at least one scholarship that you can fill out for the state of Missouri. Mrs. Swisher, I think we'll probably talk about that later, that freshmen can do. And it's something only freshmen can do. You can't do it as an older student. And then also on Going Merry, there are multiple dozens of scholarships that freshmen can fill out on Going Merry and other websites as well. So that's kind of the answer to that question, Jonathan. Great question. I'm on to you though, Jonathan. I know the snide comment you made in your message, and I know it. But anyways, I sent an email back to you. But anyways, the next question is, when is the best time to start applying? Mrs. Swisher, do you want to answer that?
Now. The time is now. You can absolutely start answering or filling out applications right now for national scholarships. The Hagen Scholarship is a huge scholarship that is goes off of your merit, goes off of how much money you make, and it is due December 1st. So that would be a huge scholarship that would pay for most likely every single bit of your school, dorms, food, all of that. So that one, like I said, is due December 1st. So that one's coming up very quickly. So the time is now.
All right. The next question we have is, what can I do to make my scholarship stand out? And we're going to ask Mrs. Lowery to answer this one.
Yeah, so as faculty, we will review your scholarships, and we look for certain criteria that makes us want to award you that money. So the first one I always look for is, how personal are you? Did you dig a little bit deep into your scholarship essay? I want to know who you are. From what I see, you are just going to be a number. You're going to be scholarship essay 716. That doesn't really give me much information about you. And if I'm asking what was something you overcame in your high school career, and if you just say, oh, I broke my leg and now I'm trying to get back into it, and so I want to do athletic training, that didn't really give me much information. I want to hear about how hard it was for you to get back into basketball and how your physical therapy sessions went. You just dig a little bit deep, we'll want to award you more money. And it's all anonymous, so we won't know who you are. We won't know who your grandmother was if you talk about her, things like that. So just get personal with those scholarship essays.
All right, excellent. Mrs. Swisher, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes. I mean, this is the time, and I mean this in the nicest and happiest way possible, but if you've had hardships that have happened to you in your lifetime, this is the time to talk about those also. If you have had things like, if you've had a much tougher life than other students, you need to talk about that and explain why you deserve those scholarships over other students as well.
And I will just add one thing about that. for these type of events that Mrs. Lowery and Mrs. Swisher are talking about, you need to document that while they're fresh on your mind. So you could take this time to create a document in your Google Drive. I may be stealing Swisher's thunder later on, but she can say it again then too, because it's important. Have a list in your Google folder or your Google Drive with achievements and these hardships that they're talking about, and that'll help you out so much in the end. But moving on to the next question. How would you go about finding scholarships? First of all, we're going to talk with Ms. Swisher about that, and then Mrs. Lowery, and then I might say something if necessary. So Ms. Swisher, take it away.
Yep. The first spot that I would definitely look at as a student at Warsaw High School is our Warsaw High School database. And our database, not only do we have links where you can find them, but Ms. Wisdom has them all categorized by when the due date is, when they open up. And those have our local, those have national, those have just Missouri scholarships. But that is a great place to start. My Scholarship Central is an incredible place to start. It has a whole bunch also that specific students could qualify for, even if your parents have been in prison. So like if your parent has been to prison, there's a scholarship for that through My Scholarship Central. There's multiple places, but you don't want to look into too many places because you don't want to get overwhelmed and not do them. So let me help you.
Couldn't see her.
Oh, was cut off.
All right.
Just to add on to that, when you apply as a senior and you're applying for a first-time freshman at a college, we are going to send you so many emails about our scholarships. You're going to receive what feels like every day. So double check those emails. You're going to receive them about any academic scholarships, any scholarships that might automatically apply to you into your account if you qualify for any athletic. So just keep an eye on your school email. I also recommend going out to any local businesses. Like Ms. Swisher said, you guys have a database that can go out and you can find them through there. But I always would go out and talk to any local business that you know someone that works there. See if they offer anything. They might just not advertise it very well, or it might be a brand new scholarship and the word's not out yet. So it never hurts to go out and ask.
And the only thing I'll add to this is, and Ms. Swisher, I'll come back to you in a second, but there is a video that I've created and I shared with the counselor update, and then also on our school website about scholarships. I demonstrate in that video going to UCM's website and basically finding thousands of dollars of scholarships. So once you've applied to a school, you should reach out to that school very actively. They'll have websites for it, like these ladies have already said, but just getting in there and doing it could earn you thousands of dollars. And Mrs. Swisher, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay.
And the nice thing about UCM and State Fair is that we have one big scholarship application for all scholarships. So our database automatically pinpoints which scholarships pertain to you based off the county you live in, what degree program you're going into. So you might have 5 that apply to you, but you don't have to apply 5 times. You apply once and then all 5 automatically apply. So it makes it easier on you guys, especially if you're filling out multiple in your senior year.
All right, perfect. What are colleges looking for in a scholarship?
Yeah, so kind of back to making that document. We want to know everything that you did in your high school career, any extracurriculars, any volunteer hours, if you were a part of NHS, if you did FBLA, any of your athletic career, if you had 1,000 points in basketball, you made all-state, whatever the case may be. We want to know everything that you did in high school so we can see all of your extracurriculars. We also look for good grammar. It should probably be a pretty well-known thing, but proofread those essays, make sure that you are putting your best paper forward, even if that means taking it to a professor, a counselor, one of your parents, someone just to proofread it real quick.
Yes, and that starts, these lists that Mr. Richardson and Mrs. Lowery have brought up, these are things that you can start doing as freshmen as well. So start these lists of volunteer hours and of what you are involved in as a freshman, because believe it or not, when you get to be a senior and you're extremely overwhelmed, feeling all kinds of pressure, you will forget things. So if you start that as a freshman and add on to it each year, it's going to be so much less stressful for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a prime example of that, when I was in high school, I was in a group called Peer Leaders, and we did volunteer work. And like when I got to my senior year, totally overwhelmed. I had volunteer hours that we volunteered at soup kitchens and did all this community service. I couldn't remember it. So that's a good point, Mrs. Swisher and Mrs. Lowery. Thank you. Next question. How do you know if you qualify for a particular scholarship? Mrs. Swisher, we had 2 students ask this question. What do you think about that?
Every scholarship, if it does have specific qualifications, it will state if they have specific qualifications. So, I mean, you just have to read it.
Yep. And like I said, with our application, it automatically pinpoints for you. So that's not necessarily something you'll have to go through and dig deep to find. Sometimes they'll just automatically apply to you, or you don't really need to worry about going in deeper.
Right. And most scholarships will have a list at the very beginning of the application of the things you need. Not all of them, but most of them. So usually there's a checklist or something you can hop in there and just quickly glance through it without having to dig real deep into the scholarship to find out if you qualified for that. Good question. All right, next, what kind of scholarships are there out there? Mrs. Swisher?
Well, I think we've kind of already touched base on that one, other than, you know, local, national, statewide, university or community college wise. So there's quite a few different categories per se of scholarships.
You can have an athletic scholarship, an academic. Each college might be a little bit different on their academic and athletics. So that'll just be something like Mr. Richardson said, you might want to go to their scholarship website and just see which might apply to you, whether it's academic or athletic.
The only thing that I would add to that really, so just doing the merit-based scholarships, a lot of students look at that and say, such and such college has given me so many $1,000s, and then they think in their mind, I'm done. I don't need to really add any more to that. But that is not true. There are some students out there that will fill out multiple scholarships and actually make money going to college. So especially if you're going to like a state fair or a community college, you could bank several $1,000s every semester just by filling these scholarships out. So there's lots of different scholarships out there. If you have more questions about that, we can talk about that later. So, and I kind of led into this, but what are merit-based college scholarships and how does that work? And I think Mrs. Lowery's kind of already covered that, but
yeah, so merit-based scholarships are going to be scholarships that you earn by meeting the criteria that was set by the scholarship giver. So your person, John Smith, will be donating $500 for a student who's in the nursing program who meets a GPA of 3.5. If you're in the nursing program, you have the GPA of 3.5, you're good to apply for that. So as long as you meet the expectations for that merit-based and you give a good scholarship essay, you will theoretically then receive the merit-based scholarship.
a lot of those merit-based scholarships are based on GPA and your ACT score. So if you're a senior and you're debating, I don't really want to take the ACT because these colleges are now doing test optional, doing an ACT would be a valuable tool for you to get more money. Maybe you don't need it for admission, but maybe you could get, I mean, like Missouri S&T. I mean, if you have a certain GPA and a certain ACT score, you automatically get what's called a minor scholarship, which is like $4,000 a year. You multiply that times 4, that's $8,000 towards your school that you're not having to pay for. So merit-based scholarship can be very powerful. Mrs. Swisher, you have anything to add?
Mr. Richardson, I want to step in here. We had a question in the chat asking where to find the scholarship database. So I have posted the link to that in the chat group. So, and just a reminder, if anybody has any questions, post those in the chat and we'll try to address them. Perfect.
Yeah, and students and staff, if you have questions about that, it's on the school website. There's a link for it. I sent it out in my counselor update in November. Lord willing, I will continue to do counselor updates every month. So there should be one coming out in December coming up shortly. So there'll be other links there as well. So great question for whoever asked it. How can I prepare for scholarship writing?
Which I know we've said this plenty of times now. document all of your extracurriculars. If that is the only thing you guys get from me sitting here, then I did my job. That is something that you will not regret ever doing. Another good thing is to write an outline. Writing down an outline of some solid questions that you might see. What's a hardship you encountered? How do you expect the scholarship to help you pay for college? There you can find lists of common essay scholarship questions and make an outline for them. Have your introduction, have your body paragraph, have your conclusion. Will just help you in the long run, especially if you're applying for a lot of scholarships at one time.
And students, your teachers are great. I know Mrs. Adler covers and senior English covers scholarship and resume writing, and all that kind of goes into this all together. Use your English teachers as good sources for editing and stuff. But then think of your other teachers. All your teachers here at Warsaw High School have a lot of experience with this kind of stuff. And you can ask. I know Mrs. Siegel has offered to help students in the past. I'm sorry about name dropping here. Literally anyone here at our school would be a valuable resource to edit and look at your scholarships.
I recommend that you read it out loud as well. When you're typing something out, the voice inside your head sounds a little bit different than a voice as you speak it out. So that's always kind of a good first step to read through it out loud once or twice, and you can kind of see if you need a punctuation mark here. This needs to be 2 sentences rather than 1. It's always a good first step.
All right. So we had another question here, types of scholarships. Mrs. Swisher's kind of already covered that. She mentioned the December 1st deadline for the Hagen. Like that's, I think, something like $80,000 plus other benefits as well. Usually if somebody fills that out from our school district, we've had multiple students win. I think we had 2 students last year. We may have skipped a year, but then we had like 2 students in the past. It's a very good scholarship. And then, like Mrs. Swisher said earlier, the My Scholarship Central. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Mrs. Swisher?
Nope.
Okay. At what grade can I start applying, or what can I do to prepare? Which we've kind of already covered the prepare, but what grade can we start to apply? Mrs. Swisher?
So as a freshman, there is what is called the My Missouri Scholarship Promise. And if you start this as a freshman, it has GPA requirements. It also has low income requirements. You do have to open up specific, it's called a Most 529 account. So there are quite a few specifications for that one, but you can start that as a freshman in high school. But otherwise, the rest of them, you do need to be a senior in high school to start.
There are a few freshman, sophomore, junior specific scholarships on Going Mary and other scholarship platforms, but just keep in mind those are national scholarships. So if you submit something for a national scholarship, it needs to be your absolute top-notch work. You're going up against potentially millions of other students, or at least thousands. So you're just as qualified as any other student in the country to get those, but like it can't have any problems. It has to be a perfect work of scholarship writing. So make sure you keep that in mind, especially your younger students. You do have a specific advantage as a younger student going for those scholarships, because most freshmen don't think about doing scholarships, to be completely honest. So for a good freshman scholarship, you might not be going against tens of thousands. You may be going against a couple, 300. So it is important that you, if you're wanting to be serious and proactive, if you're a sophomore, freshman, or freshman, sophomore, junior, you do have a little better chance at those national scholarships, specifically for those grade levels. Next is, what is the difference between a grant, loan, and a scholarship?
Yeah, so a scholarship is something that you will apply for. It is awarded by a scholarship giver. So there's a foundation and they have donated money for a student to receive a scholarship every semester, every year. That is up to the donor's prerogative of how often they want to give the scholarship. A grant is money that you receive that you don't have to pay back. And that is the same with a scholarship. It is just your money. It can be applied to your room and board if you wanted to go towards your tuition, maybe some books. That is, you can set up how you want it to pay for. A loan is money that you will have to pay back. So that is the one difference between loan, grant, and scholarship. You have to pay it back. When you fill out your FAFSA, there are different types of loans that you can even get through there. You can get unsubsidized, subsidized loans. It really just varies and depends on each individual person.
Ms. Swisher, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, that is perfect. Thank you so much.
All right. I would just say when you do get in there, and their colleges and your financial aid advisors will tell you this, the subsidized is the way to go, because what that means is the government basically pays your interest on those loans up until 6 months after graduation. So when you're filling out a loan, remember, you still have to pay it back. But if you do have to have a loan, you'll want to make sure you go for that subsidized, because then you're not paying interest while you're in school. And another little hint, if you do take out a loan, it is hugely beneficial for you to try to pay that back while you're in school, because that is free money in that you're not having to pay interest on it. So if you can have almost all of it paid back before 6 months is out of 6 months out of college, you would have basically used that money for free. So it's not free money, but it can be if you use it wisely, it can be a huge help.
Interest-free money.
Yeah,
Yes,
interest-free money. There we go.
Good phrase.
So what is the best way to get your name out there for colleges to see?
Come visit us multiple times. Advisors, not just State Fair, advisors from any college will come out to your schools. We will be at fairs. You can come to our school. The more I see a student's face and I get to know them, the more likely I am to check up on them, maybe offer them work study positions, because I know them more personally. So get out there, go to the colleges you're interested in, reach out, ask questions, talk to them on the phone. A lot of colleges are doing text messages now. Text them. Just don't be afraid to go out there and introduce yourself to the college that you really want to go to.
Ms. Swisher, you want to add anything?
No, that's great.
All right. What are good scholarships to apply for that could be used at most colleges that aren't well known? Ms. Swisher, do you have anything for that one?
Those localized scholarships you can pretty much use anywhere you want to. Really, most of the scholarships that you apply to, unless they are specific to the schools, are all good. So it doesn't matter which way where you want to use them. Most of the foundations are just happy that you've applied and are able to use them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I think that is probably about it. The advisory bell did ring, and that was actually our last scholarship question. There were 4 other questions that were asked by a student that was geared towards making a selection in college. So seniors and juniors, and all students, we may do another podcast, and that very well might be our next topic. But for this one for today, we're going to call that good. Thank you for tuning in.